What is up, my friends? Welcome back, gamers. My name is Brian, and today we are continuing our countdown for the top 50 games of all time, at least as of right now. These games are an evolving list. They are always changing every year as I play new games and things shift out. So we're continually updating this list, and this will be my 2024 current year version. If you are curious how I do my rankings, I encourage you to watch this little section. But if you've already seen it, you can skip ahead using the timestamps down below. Before we get to the list, I think it's important to talk about how I formulate this list. How did I come to the conclusions for the games and where they're placed? And I use a 3-tier system when I'm placing games on there. The first thing I like to ask myself is, how good is this game? How well did this game achieve the goals it's trying to achieve? Was it fun to play? Overall, is the reception of my fellow gamers relatively good on this game? And if those are all true, those types of games will find themselves higher on the list. The next thing that I like to look at is, how easy is it for me to remember this game? And how easy is it for me to teach this game? Ease of play is very important. I want to make sure that this is a game that I could bring to the table relatively easier, make sure I can learn the rules. They are imprinted easily in my memory. And if a game is able to do that, it'll find itself higher on this list. And finally, I always think this is probably the most biased part of any of these lists, but the third one is, how much did I personally enjoy the game? There are games that people consider bad games, but there are people who are champions for those games. It's just a fact of life. So there are some games that I just love. I also do believe that recency bias can play into an effect on some of these lists. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the list. So starting off at number 40 is going to be Blood Rage from Simon, with Eric Lang as a designer. Now, I don't have this game in my collection. This is one that I usually play with other people's copies. And Blood Rage for a long time was pretty high on my list. In fact, it was 18 last year. So it has fallen back. And I think that's because with multiple plays and more plays that we've had this year, and when I say this year, I'm referring to 2024, that the game has just started to feel like I have seen everything that this game can provide for me, and it's starting to show its age. And there's other games, other area control games that kind of strike the itch for me a little bit better. So what is Blood Rage? Well, Blood Rage is a Viking-themed area control game where players are going to be placing their warriors and their leader into different territories to try to gain control of these sections during different battle phases. To do so, they're going to be drafting different types of cards that can give them different types of abilities, that can make their leader stronger, give them additional types of allies or different types of units, effectively making their abilities a little bit more asymmetrical. The drafting portion of this game was one of the main reasons it held such a high regard for me. I really enjoyed the drafting mechanic, and I still think it is the strongest mechanic for this game in terms of all of its mechanics. I think the drafting is definitely the best. And this is probably a personal feeling, but after so many plays, playing with the same group of people, you start seeing the strategies kind of coalesce into, these are the stronger strategies, these are less strong strategies, and it just lost its luster for me. So while I do think Blood Rage is a solid game, and for people who haven't played it, you can have yourself years of enjoyment from this area control game, I find to see that the sheen has worn off a little bit, and I'm curious to see where Blood Rage will find itself next year. Coming in at number 39 is Company of Heroes, the board game. Now, I should preface and say that I'm a huge World War II fan, so there are some bonus points being attributed to Company of Heroes. Plus, I have played the PC game of Company of Heroes 2 specifically to death. And this game really takes a lot of the different types of assets and gameplay mechanics that are found in Company Heroes 2, the video game on PC, and really implement it into this board game. And this game is one of the best implementations of an RTS game that I've seen that have been transported to a tabletop. So what is Company Heroes, the board game? Well, it is a strategic war game where you are going to be playing one of the different factions. You have two German factions, you have the British, you have the Americans, and you have the Russians. And you are going to be playing the Axis versus the Allies, choosing one of those factions to go ahead and, defeat your opponent. Eventually, you are going to be trying to get to different types of control nodes, kind of a king of the hill aspect, but there are multiple of them on the field that provide you different types of resources, such as manpower to purchase more units, fuel to purchase your tanks, or ammunition to produce to do your special abilities. I really liked how well this implemented the video game feel to a tabletop, and the miniatures are really good in terms of very accurate depictions of World War II warfare. I actually have an unboxing video for this. If you haven't seen that, you can actually see some of the units I'm talking about. And I'm really looking forward to the update, second edition, that will be coming hopefully this year to Company Heroes, because it really enhanced a lot of the gameplay and the fiddliness, which has caused this game to not get played as much as I wish it would. And I can't wait for those expansions to show up. Now, I did play those online with the publisher and the designer, so I've gotten experience of playing those, and it really just elevates this game to another level. Now, in terms of where Company Heroes was last year, it was actually at 24, so this was higher on my list. So falling to 39 is probably mostly to the lack of play, because of I'm kind of waiting for the additional content, which in my opinion really solidifies and finishes this game to where it should be at. So that is number 39, Company of Heroes. Coming in at number 38 is Ares Expedition, and this is Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. So this is 38. It was 59 last year on my list, so this wasn't even in my top 50. So this was an exclusion, but so now it's actually made it. And I think there's a few reasons this game has risen on my list. Mostly, though, it's because of the Discovery, Foundations, and Crisis expansions, which enhance the gameplay. Now, the original game is a take on the Terraforming Mars design, which I think is a very elegant, fun game with the Tableau building system, and this very much plays into that, but plays in a little bit different system with the card play of choosing what kind of actions you're going to choose, and really kind of it's got the flavor and feels Terraforming Mars, especially with a lot of the cards, but it's offering its own gameplay. But there were things missing from it, and I felt like the Discovery, Foundations, and Crisis expansions that came from Kickstarter really enhanced this game to make it to being kind of a more complete package. And in terms of if I want to play the Terraforming Mars experience with someone, especially people that are newer gamers, I find that this is a great way to kind of give them a kind of an abridged version of the feeling of playing Terraforming Mars with less complexity and less time investment needed. So this is a great game, very inexpensive, although I don't know the cost of the 3 expansions in terms of getting those into your collection now, but in terms of finding the Ares Expedition base game, which is still a very good game, of course, not still in my top 100, which is still great, you can find this for like $25 to $35. It's a really great game for the price. So that is Ares Expedition, Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition. New to the list this year, coming in at number 37, is Earth Under Siege Flashpoint. Now, I've talked about this game on the channel a little bit already. I will be having a video for this, a dedicated video kind of shortly, kind of talking about more about why I like this game. But this is a game where you are effectively playing XCOM in a little bit of Splinter Cell from those video games on the tabletop, in a campaign-driven game where you are taking a squad of human soldiers trying to defend and fight back against an alien invasion. So when I say this is XCOM, if you've played XCOM, the way to kind of understand the way this game works is you will be taking a squad of troops into a dungeon of some sort. It's a facility, and you are going to try to sneak in and complete whatever your objective may be. It might be to rescue a hostage, discover some alien equipment, whatever it may be. And there will be unknown enemies inside this facility. You'll only have like the layout going into this. But the game uses hidden movement, kind of, in a sense of there'll be enemy blips moving around the map. Now, you won't know what these blips are in terms of what the enemy is. You just know that there's something there until you gain vision of it. There's also a stealth mechanic where when you gain vision of an enemy, you will reveal and draw what it is, and then that will show you what its perception value is, and then you can roll your stealth value. There's a lot of checks in this game, a lot of skill checks to see if you remain hidden. So it's got this gameplay feeling of you have the choices of playing stealthy and try to completing your objective with as minimal contact as possible, or going guns blazing using your skills and your weapons as your operators to complete the mission as quickly as possible, because as soon as you alert the enemies, they start cascading almost in a horde mode like attack system. Earth Under Siege offers a lot of interesting gameplay. Now, there are things that kind of detract from it. It's a little fiddly at times, way too many tokens in this game, and the amount of space and stuff it can take are reasonable. But within this game is a really cool system, very well made and thought out a design from the publisher with the rule book, wanting to make sure that every question you could potentially have with the rules or nuances is answered. I really appreciate that in this game, and as a campaign game, being able to have things matter when you go to a mission. It'll say, here's your mission 3A or 3B, and by choosing one, you are going to have rewards for that one, obviously, but they're also going to have some drawbacks. One for not going after A, so whatever A was is going to have some drawbacks, and then potentially for failing this mission, you can have additional drawbacks. I like that there's a weight of consequences to your decisions as you go through and play the campaign. So that is Earth Under Siege. Really brilliant game. I do believe there's a new Kickstarter campaign coming very shortly, so be on the lookout for that one. Coming in at number 36 is Mind MGMT, or Mind Management, depending on who you ask. I think I like Mind Management, but I hear so many people say MGMT, so whatever. Now, Mind Management was number 19 last year, so another fall for me. Not necessarily, I think, in terms of a bad game or my thoughts of this game have lessened, but our gameplay in terms of how often we hit to the table has lowered. Mind Management is a game where this is a true hidden movement game, okay? So you're going to have two sides. You're going to have basically the hunters and the hiders, the seekers and hiders, whatever you want to say. And whoever is the hider is going to try to evade the people looking for them for a certain amount of turns. And the seekers are going to have different types of abilities and deduction to kind of figure out where you are hiding by using different types of skills and, discussions between, well, based off what's happening, the only places they can be here or here, and you kind of start deducing where they're going to be. One of the other things that I really, really like about Mind Management that is kind of unique, and I haven't seen this done with many other games, is that there's an entire booklet inside this game which has additional powers and abilities for both sides, both seekers and hiders, that will give you additional abilities and skills that you can add to your repertoire, and those are unlocked when you lose the game. So if I am the hider, if I'm playing as the hiding people and the seekers found me and they won, then I get to go through that book, choose one of the abilities I like to unlock. They're usually just art, so you don't really know what the ability is. And now I've got a new skill or new escape or an evasion or something that I can utilize for the next game. So those are additional compounding rules, almost like a legacy game, but you're not destroying any of the components. You're just adding additional content to the game that can help the faction that lost last to get a kind of a leg up. And then the next game, if the hiders win and the seekers lose, now they get to add something to their abilities and skills to be able to find you better or to counteract some of the abilities you may have. I think that's a really, really cool mechanic, and just makes this game feel new and fresh with all of your games until you've unlocked all of the different combinations. And I think that's a really cool aspect. Now, I have seen some people say just open them all and add them all in. I do think that's a little too much, and I like the escalation personally. I think that's what makes mind management so special for me, and that's why it's sitting here at number 36 in my top 50. Coming in at number 35 is Raw, and I always like to do that because that's how you play the game. You smash Raw on the game. This last year was 38, so same category as always. So I think that's a pretty good showing that Raw is kind of holding still with where it is. And Raw is a bidding game where players are going to be drawing a tile from a bag, and you're going to be placing it into an available pool. And when someone wants to bid for the available tiles, they're going to declare Raw, and people are going to use their little chips to bid. Now, what makes this so special is on the each player will only have 3 numbers that they're going to be able to bid with, and they range from a high number like a 13 to a middle number of 8 and a low number like a 4 or a 3. And you could bid any of those numbers, and the highest person bids wins. But the person who won the bid will have to take their high number, and they're going to place it in the middle, and they're going to have to take whatever was in the middle and put it face down on their board, and they'll have to have access to whatever that was next time. And now their high number will go to the winner of the next bid. So while you can guarantee yourself a victory by using your high number, you're going to be losing that high number, and alternatively you might be winning an extremely low number. So there's a very interesting gameplay mechanic of trying to make sure you win some of those high number bids, but you might have to bid on something that not many people want because, you know, maybe there's not very good things in the pile, or maybe it's low. I think that's interesting. Now, there's also another mechanic that'll force bids where people can draw red tiles, and also escalates the game to a completion, and they'll be playing 3 rounds. Raw is an incredible experience, and if you haven't played it, I would highly recommend finding this game. Very, very good, and this is almost one of our palate cleanser games or the end of the evening games where the gameplay is roughly done in about 30 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes. And so when you finish with the game and you still have time for more gameplay afterwards, and people are still kind of wanting to hang out a little bit more, Raw is a great fun game that most people enjoy. Plays great at high player counts as well. We play this all the time at 5 players. Just a really solid, well-made game. Again, another one like Ares Expedition that's easy to find, inexpensive too, and I'd recommend picking up. Even the retail version, which has cardboard ships, are good. I've got the deluxe edition, which has a little thicker pieces, but I think the retail version is just as good. Coming in at number 34 is a new one to the list, and one I don't have currently in my collection, is Ostia. Ostia is a game where I covered for the newest expansion for their Kickstarter campaign, and I was blown away with how good this game was. And in fact, it was a game that even after we had done our coverage for the game, we had continually played it, and I think it's one that I would shout to the rooftops of how much fun this was. Ostia is a 1 to 4 player strategy game where players are going to be using a Mancala effect, where it's a circular kind of action board where you'll be choosing an action, you'll be taking its effect, and then you'll be moving some ships around, and wherever, because there's going to be ships on this board. It's not like your port kind of thing. And wherever your final ship moves, because you're going to be taking, like say there's 3 ships, you're going to put one on each spot, and wherever the final one is, you're going to activate that action. And this causes a lot of thinky play between all the players and all the actions that you're trying to activate, as you're also trying to move your ships along the board to get different types of rewards as you try to complete and get to the very end of the track. It's a standard Euro game with a very rewarding action system, and I'd highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. I got to play the expansion as well early with the prototype, and it added a lot more complexity to the game, and also slowed down the game a little bit because it had a lot more checks and things for you to do before you can get to the end of the track, which was probably one of the bigger complaints I had, was how quickly the game can end, and people can kind of rush that end game aspect and get those victory points. So having a mechanic that says, whoa, slow down a little bit, was a nice change of pace, and what made, I think, the game so much more rewarding and enjoyable for me. Coming in at 33 is Root, and I actually don't remember what I had, if the Root was on my list. I'm pretty sure it had to have been on my list at one time. But right now it's 33. This is from Leader Games. Cole Whirl. I can't remember how you pronounce his last name. Worley. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his last name, but this was, I believe, their like flagship starting game. I've got a lot of Root expansions. I think I've got like 3 or 4 expansions in this one. So we just had the base game here with a bunch of content in here. And Root is basically a war game that would give you the sense that it is, family friendly and easy to play, but it is far from that. This game is very complex with a lot of different mechanics going on, with each of the different factions having a completely different asymmetrical gameplay loop that they're trying to do. And each one is so completely different that the complexity, and one of the hard things that comes from Root, is that you not only need to know what your faction does so that you can play your game right, to counteract what your opponents are doing, you need to know what every other faction does. And I think that's probably the reason Root has a hard time finding itself in a top 15 or top 10 section, which is where I think it could be with a lot of gamers who are into this type of game. Because Root offers a lot of complexity and a lot of different types of gameplay elements, and the variety of games that you can have with all the different expansion or the different types of character expansions they have add a lot of variety to the system. I think it's a very cool, unique system, but because of that complexity level, it feels like there's a barrier. Now, if we were to dedicate ourselves and be like, okay, we're playing Root for like 4 months and we're going to be playing this and really learn the game, I could easily see this being a top 10 game. It's that good. It's a super well-made game with a well thought out balanced system between all the different factions. I just wish it wasn't so hard to bring new people to the group to play this game, or having to remember what everything does all the time. So that's what I think holds Root back from being, I think, where it could be. But right now it's holding off at 33, which is still a solid, respectable number for sure. And coming in at 32 is Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. This is from Fantasy Flight Games, and this has been kind of my mainstay campaign game with my family for the last year and a half or 2 years or so. And I have finally, at this point, completed getting almost everything. I'm pretty sure I have everything that this game has to offer. Now, this is a game that's in the same avenue or vein as Descent or Imperial Assault, where you are going to be choosing a hero. All the group are going to be choosing a hero, and you're going to be playing against the game. This does not use a human. There's an app-driven system now with this game, which has been one of the biggest detractors for a lot of people, is the app-driven system. I don't mind it, and it allows me to actually be able to play a hero, because whenever I played these systems before, like Descent, I would end up having to be the Overlord or the Dungeon Master or the Imperials when I played Imperial Assault. So being able to actually play as a hero for once is refreshing, and it's pretty fun to get into, and I think it might be held up a lot by the Lord of the Rings IP. This falls in a lot of lines like Mansions of Madness, have a lot of similar activities and abilities and gameplay mechanics. But if you're choosing one or the other, I think it's based mostly on IP or theme and whatnot. And because of the Lord of the Rings theming with this one and the customization that each character can kind of have, and in terms of how you want to start off, and like, do I want to be Aragorn and be a captain or forger, whatever you want to do, I think that's an interesting gameplay experience that keeps this game fresh and fun and allows us to keep coming back for more. And I'm hoping that we should have everything completed, hopefully this year. If not, we'll probably complete it next year. And I forgot to mention, by the way, Journeys of Middle-earth was 40 last year, so it's actually raised up a little bit, probably because my wife and I played a little bit more recently, so you're going to kind of get that biasy bump. And coming in at number 31, I actually do have the box for this, but I didn't want to get it because it's so big and it's in a really bad spot. But it'll be Everdell, the complete collection technically, but you can just say Everdell, the collector's edition. But I'm going to be using the complete collection to kind of wrap everything into one, because I think Everdell kind of fits in that way. Everdell is one of those special games I think should belong in every person's collection. It's a very well made game where you are going to be drafting or collecting different types of buildings or creatures to add to your city, and you're only allowed to have so many in your city, so many cards, like 15 cards. So the ones you select are going to be very important. And Everdell has a very big feeling of, when you start the game, it's a worker placement game, and you only have so many workers. And it feels like when you start the game that you can't get anything completed. Like, I can't do anything. I don't have enough actions. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough workers to do anything. But as you go through the different seasons, as you go through summer and fall, you start to actually get a lot of different chaining bonuses from your buildings you've been building and getting more workers through just playing the actual game, that by the time you get to the final round, you are doing so much stuff, you're chaining so many different abilities that it's very rewarding. So I like that escalation. Now I do think maybe a little bit the starting is a little bit rough, and I think that could turn off a lot of people. That could see people quitting this game before getting halfway through, because it does feel like the ramp up period is very slow. But I do think once you get enough combos and get enough stuff in your city and you start triggering some of the abilities, letting you bury stuff and add new things and just building up upon this engine you've built is so rewarding. Everdell last year was 32, so it's found itself right in the exact same spot, kind of that middle ground for this top 50 list. And I think it's still a very solid game. And they've continually added more to the experience. And the way that I generally enjoy Everdell is by playing with one of the different types of expansions. There's a lot of different expansions for this game, but to keep the game relatively simple and whatnot, and to not add too much bloat, we usually will just add one expansion to the experience and enjoy it. Now they've added more things to the Everdell realm. Farshore was a game, Everdell Farshore, which is very similar to the same overall experiential gameplay, a little bit cleaned up, but in a different location. And they just recently mailed out Everdell Duo, so I'm excited to see what Duo adds as a 30-minute two-player game. So that is the Everdell experience, overall wrapping up everything into one Joey. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so thank you guys for watching to the end. Talk to you soon. Bye.